Hello, everyone, and welcome to Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. I am your host, Shannon Vasconcelos, and I hope all of our listeners out there are enjoying their summers. It is officially hot and humid here in Massachusetts, so if you see me glistening, that's what's going on here. But I hope everyone out there is having a good time with their summer, taking a little bit of downtime before the school year kicks in again, which is going to happen before we know it. And we do have a great show lined up for you today. In the back half of the show, my colleague Kira Tyler is going to be joining me for the second month in a row to answer listener submitted questions. And Kira and I had a great time answering your questions last month. So I'm really excited to tackle some more with Kira today. But first, we are going to be talking with Karen Kristof, who is Assistant Vice President of Enrollment and Dean of Admission at Colorado College. Welcome, Karen.
Oh, Shannon, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you here. I imagine it's hot in Colorado, but probably not as humid as in New England. Am I right about that?
You are absolutely right. We are already into the 80s and it's only morning still, yes. But definitely I lived 20 years in Massachusetts, so I do not miss the New England humidity. That's for sure.
No, I think I might be in the wrong locale, but it's better than, Florida, someplace like that. So I'll live with the summers here in New England. But thanks for coming, Karen. And this segment is part of kind of an ongoing series that we're doing to help expose students and their families to some awesome colleges that they might possibly not know too much about. It's not the 20 schools that you hear about on the news every day, but schools that might be a fantastic fit for some of our listeners out there in podcast land. And I think Colorado College is one of those schools. Those of us in the know about Colorado College and know what a great school it is. But those who don't have a lot of experience in the college world or might not be in Colorado or out west, they might not know a whole lot about Colorado College. They might get confused. Is this the University of Colorado? Is this Colorado State? And Colorado College is not either of those schools. Also great schools, but very different, right, Karen? So could you give us like the quick kind of elevator pitch on Colorado College?
Yeah, you are absolutely right. So we are a small college of about 2,300 students. And my elevator pitch would be, we are a distinctive academic program in a distinctive location. So we have a one class at a time block plan, and we are located in the Rocky Mountain West, not the hub of small liberal arts colleges, that's for sure. So we really, I think, leverage both that unique academic structure and our location to provide a world-class education for our students who come from all over everywhere to enroll in Colorado College.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned that Colorado College is a liberal arts college, and we use that term a lot, but I'm not sure that everybody really knows what that means. Can you explain what a liberal arts school is, at least to you?
Sure. Yeah, great question. And sometimes people will say liberal arts and sciences to underscore that we are not just about music, dance, theater. So we are comprehensive, small institutions that are helping students to identify an area of interest or multiple interests, so that major or minor, but are also, because we believe in the value of learning across disciplines, making sure that students know a little about a lot of things and that they have an opportunity in their major or majors and minors to focus on one thing. So our goal is to broadly educate students to go out and have an impact in the world, be able to address global and social issues, be able to, wherever their career might take them or graduate school, really be able to understand things from a broad series of perspectives, because they've had to do literature and they've had to do STEM and they've had to do arts and everything in between.
Yes. And you mentioned your block plan curriculum, which I think is really, really unique. You mentioned it's one class at a time. Can you kind of explain a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So since 1970, we have had, we started as a semester school, very traditional. And then in the late 60s, started to look at, things were going well, but could we do anything different? And one thing that professors were thinking at that time and students were thinking at that time is, what if I could just have a sole focus on one subject? What if I could just take a deep, immersive dive And what if I'm a faculty member and I only want to have one class that I'm teaching? So I can give these students my full undivided attention. And so from there came something first called the master plan, and then turned into the block plan. So it's a pretty simple structure in that students go to class in the mornings, typically about 3 hours a day. And then the afternoons are devoted to studios and labs and studying and writing papers and reading a lot of literature if that's what they're in. But depending on their subject, are kind of continuing the learning outside of the classroom. So classes start and end in a 3.5-week period. So we have 8 blocks over the course of the year. So you get to your pretty typical college 4 subjects in the fall and 4 subjects in the spring, but you do it in this very highly immersed way. Classes are capped so that most classes are 25 to 30 students, can't really get much bigger than that. And the idea is that students are learning in a very immersive way and really allows them to meet the material it's just very engaged and very exciting. Because the class is a unit learning together over this very intensive 3.5 weeks.
That sounds so interesting. I love just the thought of being able to focus on one thing at a time, and you still get the same number of classes that you would get in, within a semester or a school year, but one at a time is very, very intriguing to me, and I can see the benefits. Mentioned one small detail, but it might be important to folks, that all the classes are in the morning, right?
For the most part, faculty have some say over whether they might want to do an afternoon, but there are no 8 o'clock classes here, so that's a good thing. So generally classes start at 9 or 9:30
Okay.
and go for about 3 hours. I think the other thing that's cool about the block plan is after a block ends, so you start and finish in 3.5 weeks, then that's usually a Wednesday at noon that you're finished, and you don't have to start your next class till the following Monday morning. So we call these block breaks. So 4.5 days to take a deep exhale, check out our beautiful location in Southern Colorado at the foot of Pikes Peak Mountain, or to just be able to engage in something that you're committed to, whether it's a part-time job, an internship downtown. So I think it's also a really nice way to have a mix. You're not waiting for that long Thanksgiving week. You get a little bit of breaks and time to reflect and refresh during the course of the year. So that's also a really interesting aspect of how the calendar is structured here.
It really is. And I want to give a shout out because I was playing around on your website before recording this, and you have this really cool tool called, what is it called? Build Your Block Plan. And you can go in and play around with what 8 courses would I like to take over the course of the year? What are my blocks? What do I want to do with all the different block breaks? So in mine, I'm taking economics and ethics, and then I'm taking art and music from ancient to modern times, and then I'm taking civilization in the Middle East, and in between, I'm doing a trip to Vail. I am taking mathematical explorations of poker. So if this concept is at all intriguing to folks, go around and play with that Build Your Block Plan, because I thought it was really fun and gave a nice little image of what your schooling could look like.
Yeah, thanks. It's a really fun tool, and we put actual classes in there. So we want students to do exactly what you've done. Like, imagine what this would look like, right? And part of it is just seeing you can do some things in sequence, but we actually have ways. Let's say that you had selected, instead of mathematical economics, you had selected the first year of Japanese, let's say, and you decided, well, okay, I'm really worried that I'm not going to take this class again until the spring. So we also have this opportunity called adjuncts, where you've got that time in the afternoon. And so maybe you just want to join a lunch table or join a conversational or discussion, or you're learning how to play the cello, or you're really deep into some physics research. And so these adjunct opportunities can enhance your single block as well.
That is really cool. And I noticed on your website that you have some very unique fields of study, majors and minors, that students, you've got all the usual suspects. You can major in English, you can major in biology, right? But there were some fun ones in there.
Yeah, so 2 that I like to highlight are Southwest studies. And so it's sort of a cultural, educational, linguistic sort of deep dive into the region of the country where we are, the American Southwest and the Mexican border. So what's really also nice about the block plan is, let's say you're taking one of those Southwest studies classes, And it would be better for you to actually have the class at the US-Mexico border because you're learning in a very experiential way. Well, guess what? You can do that because you don't have to rush back to campus for your other classes. You have that as your focus. And so I think that's one of those areas, one of those majors that's not just fascinating and a little bit unique, but also really works well when you can be experiential. A hugely popular one on the newer side within our business and economics department is business, economics, and society. And ask really interesting questions. Are corporations people? And if they aren't people, which they are not, what is their responsibility to society? What's my responsibility as someone who is contributing to corporate life? So really trying to tie in some of the ethical as well as economic and societal sort of influences in that sphere. So it is probably a great example of how you could do a business and economics major and still bring in all of those elements of a liberal arts college asking good philosophical questions.
I love that, because Karen, you are speaking to an economics major. And if that had been an option at my college, that is exactly the major I would have chosen. That sounds so interesting to me. But that's really great. Now, how about, I know some of our students are interested in college's honors programs. Do you have an honors program at Colorado College?
So we don't segment students that way because we're a small school. So, so the academic expectations are the same for everyone.
For everyone. So do tell me about your student body. It's small. What is the size? What kind of diversity do you have on campus?
Sure. Yeah, so we're about 2,300 students from nearly every state in the US and about 50 countries outside the US. About 26% self-identify as students of color. Only about 18 to 19% of our students are Coloradans. So I will tell you, sometimes it's easier to talk about small liberal arts colleges in Boston than it is in Denver, because we are certainly a state with lots of huge and amazing public institutions and larger private institutions. So, so we really are very much a national and international student body. And yet we do love our Coloradans because I think they really are making a very serious commitment to be at a place that's down the road potentially, but really kind of reflects the world. So that's a little bit about our student body. And in terms of what they major in, we're pretty typical in terms of pretty much widely distributed across the curriculum, close to 40% that are doing STEM. But we have the usual sort of variety of students doing all kinds of really interesting things within the sort of the breadth of the entire curriculum across the arts and humanities as well.
That's fantastic. And I know that you mentioned the diversity on your campus and that having a diverse campus is something that is important to Colorado College. And if regular listeners to our show should be aware of the news, because we did a large segment on it the other day, but the Supreme Court recently made a ruling against the use of race in the college admissions process. Do you know yet, Karen, how that is going to affect you there at Colorado College?
That's a great question, right? So I think, first of all, it gives us an opportunity to recommit ourselves to compositional racial diversity and to say, race was never a checkbox. When you talk about a holistic admission process, you're trying to figure out who that individual is. You know, who is this person? How would you understand them in the context of their school, of their community, of their city, their state, their country? So really doing, recommitting ourselves to a deep dive into who this person is, what they've accomplished and what they have the potential to contribute to and benefit from within the block plan, within sort of any of the programs at CC. So I think one of the places that we and lots of other institutions are still working on is, how might we ask a question in addition to the required questions on the Common App, the Apply Score application, and the QuestBridge application? So we have had a question traditionally that's been, what do you think of the block plan and how will it enhance your educational goals? We're going to keep some of that, we suspect, in our question, but we're also going to use this as an opportunity to say to students, we want to see you, we want to understand who you are, and we want you to tell us what has influenced you. How did you get to this point? What is it in your background and experiences that will help us really understand this in a way that you can identify? Part part of me feels like it's a lot for a student to do. So I'm grateful that there are people like you that will assist them in figuring out how they do that. I'm not sure, I'm 58, I'm not sure exactly who I am, but I do appreciate that students will give us some clues about the things that have brought them to this moment and the things that have influenced them.
And thank you for saying that, because I do think that students put a lot of pressure on themselves to create this perfect package in a college application or a college essay, that the colleges are looking for perfection. But I think that is a very important point, that you are looking for the reflections of, you know, a 17-year-old. You don't have to be anything besides what you are. And when students try to be something else, that's usually where they go astray. So just be yourself. Karen wants to get to know you. That's all. Yeah. So what kinds of students do you think would be a really good fit for Colorado? And I guess vice versa, who maybe wouldn't be a good fit for Colorado?
Sure. I think that's such an interesting question, right? Because I think one of the things that I've always believed in my work in admission, and it's like more than 3 decades for me at this point, is you have to know your institution, right? Because I think we're all looking for, we all say these words: talented, self-motivated, interesting, bright. But what does that mean in the context of a place like Colorado College? So, you know, for us, we think a lot about the block plan. Are you excited about learning? Are you resilient? Students talk about the last half week of the block plan as week 4. I think that's sort of intentional. It's not a full week, but boy, it's the end, right? It's when all the stuff is often due. It's like having finals a bunch of times, right? Just one subject though, so not finals in 4 topics or 5 topics. But we often think about that resilience. We think about a sense of adventure, and that one's a little harder to capture, right? Because I think for some that's being outdoors. No doubt that Colorado attracts those that want to hike and ski and all those things. But what about a sense of intellectual adventure? What about someone who is going to ask really thoughtful questions in these seminar style blocks? Who's going to challenge the professor? Who's going to be eager to learn from their peers, right? So some of these things that are a little bit harder to qualify, but I think that's been why we've leaned on a question that says, hey, how do you figure out this block plan thing? What does this mean to you? What resonates for you about it? And is there a way to think about, we love to talk about how time moves differently here, as though we exist in an alternate universe. But no one did, until I got here to work at CC 3 years ago, I never used the word blockly. You know, block was a noun, not an adverb.
Right.
We talk about like the way in which you have a new set of academic peers every month, essentially. You are doing a hard pivot academically with pleasure, hopefully, or you got to take this class like we all had to do in college that you didn't love, but it's be over in 3.5 weeks. So I think some of those skills of grit, some of those skills of resilience, it is interesting because I think learners who are a little bit different, for whom, for instance, 7 classes in high school just about drives them batty. The one class at a time works well, for instance, for students that have attention challenges, who might have learning differences. And so it's been one of the things that's been really fun to discover, that in fact, a place like Colorado College, where you can have that singular focus, really allows us to consider a wider range of learners than some highly selective colleges do.
That makes a whole lot of sense. And I can absolutely, I can picture myself, who does not have any kind of substantial learning difference, but being drawn in all different directions at once, I think can take away from I'm so stressed about getting all my work done for all these classes that I'm not appreciating what I'm learning in each individual one. And your block plan is very unique in that way, and solves to that problem that may exist with other learning experiences. So that's really great. And you had mentioned your Rocky Mountain location as a sort of a very pivotal part of the Colorado College experience. Can you tell me, I've never been to Colorado Springs. What is it like there?
Great question. So we're the second largest city in Colorado after Denver, about 700,000 people in the metropolitan area. We're located just under a mile from downtown. So we are in this residential neighborhood called the Old North End, which, if the architecture were Spanish in Boston, it might look a little bit like Boston, right? Not exactly the North End, but so we have architecture that looks very much like the Southwest, but it's a lovely green, especially this summer when we've had a lot of rain here, lovely green residential campus, not very far from more hustle and bustle of a downtown area. So I think we like to think of ourselves as being one of those schools that can sort of accommodate both. Our students have some really cool ways to get downtown, Lime scooters. We have an e-bike free loan program for students where you get, I think it's 90 minutes a day on the Pikes Ride e-bike. So we're a pretty big place when it comes to sustainability. And I think, Colorado Springs certainly is known for a lot of things, but I think one of the things that's anchored the city has been our connection to the U.S. Olympic Committee, Olympic Training Center, the headquarters of the U.S. Olympic Committee. Some of our famous alums, like Peggy Fleming, the skater, and lots of others who have been medalists, have often used Colorado Springs. So we have this wonderful thing in an adjacent community called the Manitou Incline, which is essentially 1 mile straight up, all steps. And you might see Apollo Ono practicing on the incline if he wants to work on his cardio, right? Because Colorado Springs is a place where many Olympians end up training. We're at 6,000 feet, so we also have a little bit of altitude, which can help or hurt in training, depending on what you want to do. But it's just and we are in the shadow of Pikes Peak, America's Mountain, that Purple Mountain's Majesty and America's Beautiful. That was apparently the lyrics for Pikes Peak. So we have these gorgeous mountain views. If you are directionally challenged, as I can often be, if I look to the west and I see mountains, I know I'm going in the right direction.
Perfect. And what sounds like there's a big sports kind of atmosphere with the Olympic Committee and everything there. What other kinds of extracurriculars?
So we have a huge outdoor program. So a lot of students that are hiking and biking. We have everything from the beginning, like you've never done this before, you've never climbed before. We want to teach you how to do it. So we've got it to those who are very, very experienced. There are 58 mountains at or above 14,000 feet in Colorado. So those that do this regularly call them 14ers. And so some people have done, 56 of the 58 14ers when they get to Colorado College. Some of us have done no 14ers when we got to Colorado. So I think it's a beautiful place to be outside. The winters the temperature varies. At 6,000 feet with lots of sun, we have 300 days of sunshine a year. We end up sort of with snow that doesn't really linger. So it's just a lovely place to be outside. But I think we have our usual sort of music, arts. We have 15 Division III, 2 D1 sports. We have, lots of cultural affinity groups, really active weekly newspaper called The Catalyst, lots of students interested in political and social issues. So, a wide range of things that students are into.
That's fantastic. And so if this sounds great to folks out there and maybe I should apply to Colorado College, can you give us a sense of, it's not an easy school to get into, is it?
No, it's not. So, our overall selectivity runs between 15 and 28%. Okay. But we are one of those schools where if you discover us slightly earlier, it is more advantageous. So we have both early action and early decision. And so our admit rates, because we have all of our spaces and all of our financial aid, admit rates run a little bit higher, as much as 30 to 40% for early decision, and then closer to 25% for early action. So I think if you could discover us by November 1st, you're maximizing your opportunity to be admitted.
Incredibly good tip. And you're on the Common App?
We're on the Common App, we're on the QuestBridge application, and what used to be called Coalition, now Apply/Score, whatever they're calling it. But that
you're on it, whatever it is. Yeah. And how about your testing policy? You test optional?
We have been test optional since before the pandemic, and we are now moving into we're not test blind, but we are moving into something of a no harm policy this year, which is to say if you submit scores, we're not going to use them negatively in the evaluation process. They might enhance your application, but in some cases we have students submit scores that don't help their case, and academically they are quite strong. And so we are putting together a policy to sort of make sure that in the review process, we would potentially overemphasize academic performance in situations where we see a really good fit academically, but test scores were more modest.
Got it. Very helpful for folks to know. And you had mentioned you've got currently one supplementary essay, according to your website, I think at this very moment, asking about how, I'll just read it because I have it. Why do you wish to attend Colorado College, and how would the block plan serve your educational goals? Any tips for students on completing that supplement of why you asked that, what you're looking to get out of that question?
Yeah, and I think we're going to change that a little bit in light
Okay.
of recent developments. But I think that what we want is your story, right? So I think the block plan will be part of any final question, and we only have a few weeks left before we get that final question finished by August 1st. But I think really no need to tell us what we've already told you in our materials or website. Tell us a story about you. Tell us a story about why this sounds fascinating to you. Tell us a story about how it might have sounded skeptical until you did the build your own block plan or started to think about your learning style, right? We don't really need it to be our words. It needs to be your experiences and your background. So I think whatever you can do to help us understand that, that would be awesome.
Fantastic. And so folks, take note, if you're thinking of applying to Colorado College, don't start working on that supplement quite yet. It's going to change a little bit. So wait after August 1st and you have the final question. That's great to know, Karen. And how about your financial aid programs? Is there support for students who need it at Colorado College?
Yes, we meet full demonstrated financial need. We make most decisions need blind. We do make some need aware decisions, but our commitment is to meet full demonstrated financial need of any student that we admit.
That's fantastic. And I saw a reference on your website to the Colorado Pledge for Colorado residents. Can you fill us in on what that is?
Sure, that is basically taking our cost and keying them to the flagship state university for our Colorado families, basically saying, based on income and typical assets, we can sort of give you a sense for what you would pay, and it would be no higher than what it would cost for you to go to our state flagship.
That is such a fantastic commitment to Colorado residents. And that's something that we always remind folks to not discount the private colleges, because you see in terms of sticker price, a huge cost differential. In many cases, private colleges, your actual net price to attend a private colleges, in some cases will be equivalent with your state schools. And it's great that Colorado absolutely makes that pledge, that guarantee to Colorado residents. So that's absolutely fantastic. How about merit scholarships? Do you have some?
Just a little bit of merit-based aid, not much. Most of our resources are for need-based financial aid, but I think you're absolutely right about checking out net price calculators, not making assumption about sticker prices. I think that's all part of really good research as you pass August 1 and start that application process.
That's so great. And how about what kind of career support? I know sometimes I hear it's from the parents, not the students. They get concerned about a liberal arts college and they think that their student needs to be very career focused from day one. We try to convince them that that's not necessarily the case, that liberal arts colleges prepare you in so many ways to work out in the world, work with people, work on issues. What kind of career support for the parents out there that are worried do you provide at Colorado?
Yeah, so we have a wonderful career center, career coaching for students, one-on-one groups, helping them sort of develop that first resume, apply for that first internship. So lots of great resources in that way. I think the case for liberal arts is careers change, lives change. Who would have known where we would be, for instance, with the Supreme Court this summer, right? So the ability to be agile, to know how to learn, to know how to approach something new. And I'll make my final plug for CC by saying that the block plan teaches you how to work really hard, how to get something done that's complicated in a short period of time, and then take a rest. And that's kind of how the world is. I mean, I don't know about you, Shannon, but when I have a big deadline, I'm go, go, go. And then I need to have a nice nap when it's all finished. So I think that those skills, I hear from CC alums, law school is not so hard. Med school is not so hard. I know how to take a lot of complicated material and digest it and be ready to use it.
I think that is a perfect place to leave, folks. So thank you so much, Karen, for joining us. I learned so much about Colorado College. I want to take my time machine and go back to school at Colorado College. But thank you again for sharing all this great info. And I'm sure our listeners learned a lot and will be checking out your website.
Sounds great. Awesome to be with you. Take care.
Take care too. And
Bye.
listeners, stay with us. In just a few minutes, we'll be back and answering your listener questions. So come on back.